It's the Pete Sousa Show. Sports, Pete.
All right. It is the Pete Sousa Show. We are live in Central Texas, 21st floor of the Alico building. A lot to talk about. A huge day in sports. Obviously, you got the World Series tonight. You got Monday Night Football. You have all kinds of NBA and NHL action, of which we'll be talking about neither. But it is cool when you have all this stuff going on at one time. So much going on with Baylor, so much going on with the Cowboys. Baylor football, huge win. Another debilitating loss for the Cowboys coming off the bye. And it seemed like out of the gate, things were going at least well enough, but they fell apart. Another comeback that was just snuffed out. After the break in our second segment, we're going to talk to Matt Davis, who is a Washington Commanders expert. We'll give him that. Matt's going to talk with us a little bit about the Commanders, Jaden Daniels, how real that is, because it seems very real right now. So a lot of exciting things going on. I did want to start. And then we got Cam, of course, in our last segment. But I wanted to start with the Cowboys and exactly where they are right now. They're 3-4. The last time they were 3-4 with Dak at quarterback, when he was actually playing quarterback, they made a deal for Amari Cooper towards the middle of the season, right before the deadline, and they did make a run. They made the playoffs. They actually won a playoff game. And that is proof that, hey, there is something that can happen here for the Cowboys to actually get back into the playoff race and make some noise in the postseason. The problem is this is a team right now where if there was you hear major general managers, coaches, some Hall of Famers of each path that I just mentioned, when they talk about teams that are successful, what is your team's identity? I feel like the Cowboys do not have an identity right now. You watch them play, you watch them offensively, you watch them. Their identity defensively is they're just not good. Offensively, the running game, it's a shame, but what is happening back there? I mean, Zeke Elliott has 10 carries for 34 yards. He did have a touchdown. And then Dalvin Cook with 6 carries. So you got 16 carries between Dalvin Cook and Zeke Elliott, two guys who are just not in the prime of their careers, to say the least. And I think that that's a reflection of the Cowboys figuring, okay, we can find a way because we've paid a lot of money, right? They paid a lot of money for Dak. By the way, so Dalvin Cook is 29 years old. Let's see how old Zeke is, just for kicks. Zeke is 29 as well. So you get two guys who are on the brink of 30 playing running back, a position where, if you play into your 30s and you're effective, you're kind of like a unicorn. It does not happen very often. So you have two running backs who, there is no running threat for the Cowboys. And you could probably say there's no running game. CeeDee Lamb had a nice game last night, 150 yards receiving, 2 touchdowns. Dak still has been pedestrian this year, especially for a guy. I understand his contract. I don't think that's like a huge indictment on the Cowboys. There's a lot of teams that would want to have CeeDee Lamb playing quarterback, and that's the going rate for a quarterback of his ilk. So it's not like that was some horrible contract move, but the Cowboys do not look good right now. And part of the fallout last night, and my man Scotty is on the wheels of steel today, so we'll be talking. Scott, what's your last name, by the way?
Swingler.
Scotty Swingler?
You got it. You
don't play golf.
I don't play golf. I've never played golf.
Wouldn't that be the best PGA name?
It would be.
Swingler?
It would be.
Maybe it's because of Scotty Scheffler, but yeah. Yeah, and dude, you're here, you're producing shows.
Yeah.
I honestly, I was shocked at how normal and talented you seem. So I'm pretty impressed. Look,
flattery goes a long way, so keep it coming.
Scott, that's not a lie, dude. Some of the people, most of the people that have sat in that chair, I'm telling you. It's good to have Scott here. So I did want to start the show, and we'll get to this clip in a second. But after the loss, things are kind of ugly in the Cowboys locker room. I don't want to say ugly, but the loss was ugly, and clearly there's frustration that is mounting. And after the game, so during the game, let's start with the play first, Scotty. So during the game, there's a huge pass to George Kittle that almost goes for a touchdown. I want you to watch the screen. Keep your eye out for number 7, Trayvon Diggs. After this play, WFAA's Mike Leslie, who's a great guy, and I know Mike because he calls some games play-by-play. But Mike Leslie tweeted after this play, "What is Trayvon Diggs doing on this play?" All right, roll the tape. Let's take it.
Started under center, walked back to shotgun. Started under center, walked back to shotgun and throw across. Here goes Kittle on the run. George Kittle inside the 10. Kittle to the pylon. What a run! He is marked just short. George Kittle took.
So you saw at the end of the play, Trayvon Diggs comes in. By the way, Diggs finished the game with 4 tackles, 1 pass deflection. He was kind of off your screen for the majority of that sequence, but he wasn't necessarily loafing so much as I think you would say he was sizing up George Kittle to maybe take a shot and punch the ball out. And then when he saw that, obviously nobody was going to make the tackle, he had to kind of come in and close late. Look, that's all. I think there was a method there. I don't think he was dogging it. But what Leslie said in the tweet, what is Trayvon Diggs doing on this play? Certainly aggravated Trayvon Diggs. So let's get now. The game is over. The Cowboys lose 30-24 after a comeback falls short. But this is, and these guys, he's not changed yet. The team had obviously just gone into the locker room, walking by the assembled media, and look who comes back out to chat with Mike Leslie. Scotty, let's take a look.
That whole play, that's what you took for that? That's what you got for now? That whole play, that's what you got for now?
I'm asking. We can talk about it more. What were you doing then?
So the last statement was, "We can talk about D's nuts," which Mike Leslie tweeted out. I have no comment on D's nuts, which is good for him. Look, that interaction in itself is a window into a team that's struggling. And okay, you want to ask who was wrong in that scenario. Was it Trayvon Diggs? Was it Mike Leslie? I don't think anybody was wrong. Certainly not Mike Leslie. He's a media member. He's doing his job. I think a lot of times we aren't prepared for these guys to actually by the way, that was tweeted during the game. Okay. And this was like moments after the game. So I have no idea how that got to Trayvon Diggs. My guess might be that somebody sent it to his phone and he checked his phone right when he got to his locker. I have no clue, but he was right outside. You saw he had his full uniform on, came right outside to chat with Mike Leslie about that. Look, you could say that Trayvon Diggs lost his cool, but really there's a lot of you see the headlines, right? Like Cowboys player confronts local media guy. That sounds a little sexier than it actually was. He came out and asked him a couple questions and called him on the carpet and sort of kept him accountable, I guess you could say. But I was to see that it's wild. Things are going tough for the Cowboys. Remember now, when they've lost in the past leading up to the bye, there's been a lot of talk about, we're not practicing hard enough. Guys need to be more accountable. So there's a lot of smoke around the Cowboys last night. And look, or over the past, let's say month or so, or maybe even longer. But that's what happens when you have a team that's 3-4 that was expected to really be in the conversation at this point of the season, 7 games in, for the Super Bowl. And I thought that incident was sort of like a reflection on where the Cowboys are right now as a team and as an organization. If it's not one thing, it's the other, right? If it's not Jerry Jones on the local radio station taking the host to task, you couldn't have a Cowboys loss on Sunday Night Football without Trayvon Diggs or somebody coming out of the locker room poking at a local media member. And I do want to say, I don't find anybody at fault there. Certainly not Mike Leslie. And look, Diggs didn't go out there looking for a fight. He just went out there to talk a little smack and to, maybe shake Leslie up a little bit, which I'm sure he did. Whether or not, I think as a human being, when something like that happens, that's that's a no shit moment for sure. Is he coming out of the locker room? Is he coming to talk to me? That's pretty scary. So, that's state of affairs right now for the Cowboys. They are 3-4, like I mentioned. They are 2 games behind the Eagles and now 3 games behind the piping hot Washington Commanders for the NFC East. And another loss or 2 or 3, and you're in trouble here. And those losses could possibly be likely over the next few weeks. Taking a look at the Cowboys' schedule coming up, they have their opponents coming up are in the next 4 games, including Atlanta next week, are 22-9 collectively after winning yesterday. So that's a window into, and I want to get the exact. Let's get this exact schedule for you, so we can break it down, because I am interested to see exactly who these next. You mentioned they play Atlanta first. As I'm sitting here trying to fulfill for time, as the schedule I swear is coming up. Okay, so they've got the Falcons at noon. Coming up with this Sunday. That's on the road again. Then they have the Eagles at home, 3:25. Then the Texans. That's oof, that is 7:15 on ESPN on the 18th, and then the Commanders. Thanksgiving. They're on that's a noon game on Fox. So again, those teams 22-9 over the course of the season could be trouble for the Cowboys coming up here. It's kind of like make or break time, and I don't know that there's a move out there or something they can do to change. But it was encouraging to see them have the lead at halftime. But there's some blame to go around there. Let's move on to something a little more positive. Baylor with the win against Oklahoma State. They're evened up at 4-4. But what I want to do is talk about the Big 12 and how that conference, when you look at teams, like it was huge this weekend for the Big 12. Colorado winning, BYU winning, Kansas State winning, Iowa State had a bye, but everyone did what they needed to do for the conference to move forward. There's been so much parity in the Big 12, which is a lot of fun, and it's great for. I don't even know. It might not be great for ratings, because at the end of the day, you look at, what the Associated Press and a lot of times how people view these teams and the little number next to them on the screen, like that affects how many people watch the games, where the games get placed on the ESPN or Fox schedule. But everybody took care of business, and Colorado continues to take care of business. Now, a couple things on Colorado, because I haven't discussed them in a while. And it's interesting the way that the schedule has worked out. Colorado I was on the East Coast this past weekend, at home. I visited my mom in Philadelphia with my girlfriend. And Colorado, that game started at 10:15 Eastern. Like 10:15. So you're talking about that game's ending at like 1:30 Eastern time. Okay, that's a game where Shedeur Sanders was 25 of 30 for 323 yards and 2 touchdowns. And I don't give a rat's ass what people say about, like, there's a little bit of fatigue with Travis Hunter. 9 catches, 153 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And this Cincinnati team, by the way, is pretty good. So on display in front of a national television audience that unfortunately I think dwindles as time goes on and we go deeper into the night. I do feel although Colorado is getting a lot of juice nationally because of Deion Sanders, because of the Coach Prime stuff, at the same time, I feel like they might be getting almost forgotten a little bit. This is a team that's good. If Colorado can win out, and by the way, let's check out their schedule, because it is not, I don't want to say, look, it's the Big 12. Like, anything can happen at any time. But if you go down Colorado's schedule, first of all, they're on a bye this week, okay? Then they play in Lubbock on November 9th. Then they welcome Utah to Folsom Field on the 16th. Those are 2 teams that are really in free fall right now. Then Kansas, who is like the ultimate spoiler, on the 23rd. And then on November 29th, you have Oklahoma State again at home. Kansas is on the road. That's actually in Kansas City, which could kind of probably work in Colorado's favor. You see their schedule; they could very well end up 10-2. And if they do end up 10-2, I was listening to Scotty. I was listening to our boy Drake Toll this morning on Locked On Big 12. Drake was making a great point. Do you listen to Locked On Big 12?
Of course I do.
Did you listen today?
I haven't listened today.
Okay, so Drake talked about that if Colorado finishes 10-2, even if they don't make the Big 12 title game, that brand and that name recognition alone could put them on the cusp of a playoff appearance.
Yeah.
Like they could get in like an at-large, whether they're the 11th or 12th team.
Yeah, you would think if there was a one-loss team in the Big 12 championship that were to lose, Colorado, and it wasn't Colorado, they would. Yeah, I think that's very possible.
They would vault them.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a lot of fun to be had as we come down the stretch with Colorado. Another thing I want to mention about Colorado and their players and you know how much better the team is doing. When you kind of, and this is kind of getting inside baseball here with maybe a little too much Big 12 football, but whatever. Arizona has two amazing players, Noah Fafita and Ted McMillan. Ted McMillan particularly. You'll hear his name more and more as we get up to draft time. Big 6'4" wide receiver, can catch the ball, can run with the football after the catch, but can create space with his big body and make big catches. Perfect NFL receiver. Noah Fafita, these two have been playing together forever, and they have great chemistry, but right now their team sucks. They lost again this past week. It's a disappointing season for Arizona fans. And now those two players they're just not electric like Shedeur Sanders is or like Travis Hunter is, but they're two exceptional players. And there's two things at play there. Arizona is not getting, if you would have said, okay, I want Arizona's supporting cast, and let's switch them with Colorado supporting cast. Before the season, everybody would have said, I'll take that. I'll take, and supporting cast being everybody but Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders. Colorado, the rest of that team is getting better and better. Defensively, they're making big stops when they have to, timely stops, and they continue to improve. And I say it like it's weird that if ever Colorado could sneak up on you, I feel like maybe it's because I was on the East Coast and the game was on so damn late. I don't know. And maybe that's like I'm having a prisoner of the moment type style. But I think like when they play at night, the lack of respect the Big 12 is getting, I think Colorado is sort of, from a national perspective right now, on the outside looking in, and I don't think it's going to be undeniable if they continue to win, particularly if they win out, that we could be dealing with a lot of coach prime, a lot of. And by the way, Shedeur Sanders, I mean, you got to just stop. He is unbelievable as far as how he's been playing. You talk about. I want to take a look at his numbers real quick before we go to break, and then we're going to bring in my man Matt Davis. And I think we have a special guest with them, which will be a lot of fun. Let's back this up here. Get to Shedeur Sanders. Yeah, I mean, you'd like to think I had some of this stuff planned ahead of time. But, you know, that's just not how I roll around here. Let's get the team stats. Okay, individual. All right, Shedeur Sanders on the season as we finally bring his numbers up. That's why I wasn't a great talent stats guy. You know what? Hold on one second. It always seems longer than it really is, right? Okay. So on the year, he has thrown for 21 touchdowns and just 6 interceptions, which is, by the way, a lot more than last year. Last game, he had no interceptions. He threw 2 interceptions at Arizona. That was a blowout win. And then he sprinkled 1 against Kansas State, 1 against UCF. He threw for 445 yards in his opening game against North Dakota State, 300 yards at Colorado State, 341 in the win against Baylor, 388 against Kansas State, and 323 against Cincinnati. So he's got 300 plus yards in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games, and one of them is 400 yard plus. He is the best quarterback that's coming out of college. I don't think there's anything, you could say to dispute that. There is a moxie and a confidence about him, and also a relentless effort that makes him different. And I look forward to seeing him continue to be different for us. All right. Speaking of somebody that's different, we're going to talk about Jaden Daniels. Wow. He is playing amazing, right? Huge win for the Commanders yesterday. And we'll take you to the DMV, and we'll talk a little bit about how the Redskins are doing. The Pete Sousa Show, powered by the Rogue Media Network. Please don't forget Slovacics, our presenting sponsor. Also, Secor Family Ford, D1, and Daniel Stark Injury Lawyers. We'll be right back.
It's the Pete Sousa Show. Sports, Pete.
Back here, the Pete Sousa Show, powered by the Rogue Media Network, presented by Slovacics. Also, cannot forget our good friends, First National Bank of Central Texas. Hey, let's take a look now at some of the magic that is being produced in the DMV. Commanders and Redskins and Bears yesterday. By the way, I got to look this up. Jim Nantz on the call. When was the last time Jim Nantz was calling a Commanders game at, I guess, I always want to say RFK, but in Landover, Maryland. All right, let's watch the clip.
Comes down to one last play, and it's going to be getting longer by the second. You're all the way back at the 30-yard line. Now you can step into it. Here comes the Hail Mary with the game on the line, and the ball is caught! Caught! It's a miracle! It's Noah Brown! Oh, my goodness! This town is going...
This town. Hey, now let's take those guys off mute if we can. Hey, Matt.
Yes.
Are you there?
Yeah, with Adam Williamowski.
Adam, you there?
I'm here, loud and clear.
All right, so I'm so happy. I am joined now by Matt Davis and Adam Williamowski. All we see is Matt's beautiful mug on the screen. Trust me, if you've ever seen Adam, that's all we need to see. Two of these guys, two of my Richmond teammates, if you want to call them that, they were actually very active on the battlefield, especially Matt. All right, what'd you guys think? I want to go with Wilmo first. Wilmo, Jaden Daniels.
I mean, seriously, great to hear your voice, brother. I love you. But, I mean, this is just a long time coming. I mean, people were calling me, like, what do you think? What do you think? Like, it's just a long time coming. I mean, it's been misery here forever. I mean, 20-plus years. Like, I can't even remember. It's been at least 10 years since I've been to a Redskins Commanders game at FedEx Field or whatever it's called now. And, I mean, we just deserve it. That's all I can say is that to say is that we, the town, the fans, who've been suffering for 20 years, have been fans for 30, 40, 50 years, deserve it, deserve the hope. I mean, what a play, right? Like, yeah, we didn't win the Super Bowl, but I mean, there's hope, and that's all we can ask for.
Davis, do you think now, is it possible that Eli Wilimowski could play someday with Jaden Daniels? Like, that could happen.
Hey, I watched him. He's a ninth grader starting on varsity. I watched him 2 weekends ago. He looks good for a ninth grader.
Hey, so
I mean,
that's
big boy.
Sousa. So look, you got to pull up just now this afternoon. They wrote another piece on WashingtonPost.com, and the first half of the article talked about he had 13 seconds to throw the ball. Like,
okay, hold on. Let's get some context. First of all, Adam. All right. First of all, Davis's connection is much better than yours, but that's fine. Second of all right, so you guys, this is a serious story. So Bullis High School, you guys had a head coach who was absolutely like a light for everybody there in the program. And I know he mentored your son, Eli, who really is a good player. So he lost his life tragically right at the start of the season. Like what's going on around that team and that school in that area?
Yeah. So, look, I went to Bullis where my son Eli goes now. He's been there for 3 years. And 2 years ago, the head coach who'd been at the school for 10, 12 years as an assistant coach and security for the school became the head coach. And it was our last summer practice of the year. And he, fell ill and passed away a week later. And it's just been a tragedy. I mean, there's no other way to say it, but the team, the community, the entire Bullis family, pulled together. We're 7-1. We got 2 games left in the season against our 2 arch rivals this week, Landon this week and Georgetown Prep next week. And I mean, it's just been honestly, great to see the kids, the coaches, the entire community to, come together like this and do this. And it's been like phenomenal to watch, to be part of it, to see the kids play. It's our motto became Play for Ray. And that was his name, Ray Butler, and just play for Ray and hear the stands, chant that chant, and the players every game walk out on the field with giant billboards of Coach Ray, printed out for him. And, that's been the mentality, and it's been something great to see.
Davis, you saw it up close and personal, right?
Yeah, they look good. They played Episcopal High School 2 Fridays ago. I was fortunate enough to make it out there. Team looks really good, and we're rich in talent in the DMV here, Pete. We got a lot of good football, a lot of good basketball here.
All right, Matt. I want to hear you talk, and Wilma, stay on the line. Don't get ADD and leave. Matt,
I'm here.
All right, really, what did you? Because I want to ask you about. We're going to talk Richmond in a second. What do you think about Jaden Daniels for real? And this is I want true serum coming through, because you and I talked early in the season. I was like, man, I don't know. It's too early to tell. But even plays like yesterday, like that magical stuff, is he better? Here's a good question. Is he better than RG3's rookie year?
I believe so. I mean, the biggest difference I see is just, his overall presence and poise, but he throws guys open, constantly throwing guys open. His ability to extend a play, with his feet or with his scrambling ability is like nothing we've ever seen. I just think that I definitely think that, he's got more upside at this point than RG3 does, even though he provided a big spark for us a bunch of years back. I do think he's a special player. The worry with me is with Jaden is every time he takes off, I'm like, don't get hit, get down, because he is not a big guy. And that's my number one concern with him is moving forward is just the longevity and the health with his body style. And he does like to take off from time to time, but he's just got to get down.
All right. We talked about, that's a good take, Matt, by the way. We talked about the rich in the DMV area, right? Wilmo, of course, we're talking about Maryland, DC, and Virginia. Adam, how good of a player was Matt Davis coming out of Gonzaga High School? Like, do you remember him?
I mean, so let me tell you my first memory. Let me tell you my first memory of Matt Davis. So Trey Teichelman, right? Was that our strength and conditioning coach? So our summer before our freshman year of college, it was different back then. The 1990s, like you didn't show up in college until, a couple in August is when you would show up. So I was at Ocean City, Maryland, and we got our printed out workout book from Trey Teichelman, and I go to the local gym there, and I walk in, and there's like two other meatheads working out, like this big guy, and then this really bowling ball of a running back, and lo and behold, who was it? It was Rob Bella, Matt Davis, and that was my first memory of Matt and Rob. And look, right afterwards, it was before the days of the internet, so it's harder to find out who was who. But look, Davis was a legend. I hear more stories about him now than I did back then. I've coached youth football with other Gonzaga guys, and like everything I've heard about Davis. Look, he was Timmy Award Player of the Year in the DMV. Gonzaga Athletics Hall of Fame. I don't think it gets any more prominent of a high school football player than Matt Davis in this area. And I hear that from people whenever I say Richmond and Gonzaga and this, that, or the other. They always talk about Matt Davis.
All right, so I love it because I think Davis should have played in the NFL, but whatever.
Thank goodness Adam's being really kind today. There's
hey, what do you guys think about? So we have like a notable Richmond alum who's really in the eye of the storm right now, Joe Douglas. How do you guys? I think he's done a really good job, like amassing talent and getting them in the right places to play for the Jets. But the team just seems like they can't get out of their own way. What are your guys' thoughts? Adam, you go first about Joe. Douglas.
Look, Joe is in a tough position, right? Like they sign a quarterback who's at the end of his career. You look at the Redskins years ago, what they did, when they signed Bruce Smith at the end of his career and Deion Sanders and Davis, I'm blanking who the quarterback was back then that they signed. But it was someone at the end of his career. And look, they have a very short window to win in New York. Aaron Rodgers only has so much time left. With his body and his arm and everything. And look, it's very hard in football. You have to have a continuity and a team, and offense, defense, special team. They got to play together as a team. And I think certainly making a coaching change in the middle of the season doesn't help with that chemistry. At least on offense, it doesn't. And I think then they go out and sign Devontae Adams, to come in and join the team in the middle of the season. So you got to, while they've played together in the past, it's all new chemistry and they got to build something from scratch. And I think that's what it is. They just don't have time to organically build a championship team there. It's win now, and that's all they can do, and it's not working out.
Davis, what do you think?
Davis, I think he's a premier evaluator of talent. He started from nothing. I remember watching Joe on the first episode of Hard Knocks, and he was the Turk, the guy that went to get the playbook. But in circles and guys that I know in the league, he has been a premier evaluator of talent, and that was shown in his first year with the Jets when he got the rookie of the year on defense and the rookie of the year on offense. That's unheard of for a team to get both offense and defensive rookie of the year. So that's that. I don't think from a talent standpoint that from evaluating talent, there's anybody better. Now he's in the general manager role. I don't know with Aaron Rodgers, how much of that decision was him, how much was Woody Johnson, but he had to go with what he was dealt with Aaron Rodgers, and like Adam said, a guy at the tail end of his career, and they have all their eggs in that basket, and it doesn't seem to be working out at this point in time. So it's tough. It's tough on Joe. I feel bad for Joe. He had the Hassan Reddick thing at the beginning of the season where he was holding out. And I think, what was the guy's name? Jamal Adams. What was the safety's name? His first year was kind of a similar situation. He didn't want to be there. So being a general manager, it's tough because you have to deal with all these people.
There couldn't be. Look, we all know where Joe spent the majority of his career, right? Was in Baltimore. And he started, carrying the briefcase and driving Ozzie Newsome around. And he spent at least 15 years, if not longer. And then I think he went to Chicago or Pittsburgh or Philly. Philly it was. Chicago and then Philly. And, when you look at organizationally, the continuity that Steve Bisciotti has in Baltimore and John Harbaugh, the second longest tenured coach in the league behind Tomlin in Pittsburgh, and how long their players stay there and so forth, and what they commit to their players. I mean, I think that's how Joe grew up, and I think right now he's working for an owner who has the win now mentality. And when you look at the last, I'm certainly no expert, Sousa, you're more than either of us. Scary calling you an expert in anything, but certainly, Johnson up there in the with the Jets, it's kind of always been win now. What have you done for me lately? And, until you look at the greatest teams in the league, and, it's going to be interesting to see what Bob Kraft does, how short his leash is as he rebuilds for the first time in 20 years.
Dude, Adam,
with the Patriots.
you bring up a great point about about ownership, right? Like I just watched, you guys got to see, did you guys see that documentary about the Red Sox, The Comeback yet?
I watched the first episode of it.
It's so good, but one of the sticking points that I took away from it was like, they switched ownership and they broke an 86-year-old, air quotes curse. And it starts at the top. And I'm not like, this isn't an indictment on Woody Johnson, but it's clear that Belichick doesn't like him. He's not everybody's favorite person. And I think that Joe is, like you guys said, he's in a tough situation. And if you read, like, I listen to Mad Dog Russo, I read, the Post and all that stuff, and nobody's really coming after Joe. It's just kind of, he's just in a tough situation.
Yeah, it's rough on him. I mean, especially, you always think a team's going to come back and win a bunch of games in a row, and like Adam talked about, having Devontae Adams there, you thought, give him another week and things will start turning around. But when you lose to the Patriots, who their head coach called them soft the week before, not a very good football team. It's the lowest of low right now in New York for them, and the media there is a tough place to be. And I agree with you. I don't see a lot of stuff coming out against Joe, and I think that's fair. But you never know. Hopefully they can turn it around and start to win some football games. But
we're pulling. It's funny. We're we're pulling for them. Wilmo, what's going on with you? Anything personal you want to add before act like yourself, like, for a second?
Well, I mean, look, so going back to the Commanders, like my voice has been losing my voice all day here. Just after the excitement. But I mean, Sousa, you talk about a let. No, I did not go to the game.
But you lost.
I'm not. I lost my voice to yelling. So my son had homecoming on Saturday night. So there was like half a dozen kids still at our house watching the game, and some of their parents had come by to pick them up. So it was quite a celebration. But I mean, look, Sousa, to turn the cards on you. I mean, you talk about Davis as a legend in high school. I mean, what about you? I mean, you were one of the greatest football players ever to come out of mainline Philadelphia. I mean, I mean, 6'4", 265 coming to Richmond. We all know
6'6", and I was probably 230. And I didn't have the edge to be like a player of Davis's ilk. I was too soft. But
I mean, if Davis had your speed, he'd probably be in the NFL.
Davis is faster than me. I love, I appreciate it. Like all this stuff about but I guess I could have been good. What am I saying? I got
to. Before we go,
hey, Wilmo, Davis met Christy, my girlfriend.
Oh, that's amazing. Do we? I mean, two things. So one is the
out of his league, by the way, out of his league. But go ahead.
One is today is the what do they call it? A sports apocalypse, or what do they call it?
Yeah. We were talking. My buddy Cam and I were talking about that. Everybody's playing. Everything's playing.
Everyone's playing. That's amazing. And what about? Can we get a quick Sixers update from a guy on the ground in Philly? I mean, I saw you were with Craig. You were with Craig last week,
Craig Miller, yeah. And look, the Sixers, they're just really hard to root for. You guys may be going this, at least with the Wiz, like they suck, and you guys know what you have, and they're like the underdog. The Sixers have almost been like, remember, like some of the fraternity guys who like wouldn't hang out with us because we were football players when we got to Richmond. Like some of the guys who we considered like rich kids it was just tough to like them. But then when you got to know them, you really did like them, and they were pretty cool. Right now with the Sixers, I'm in my phase of like, I can't relate to these guys. I just can't. I just can't. And it's a shame because I grew up my entire life in the midst of a love affair with the Sixers, but it's hard to like these guys right now.
Hey, we'll take one at a time. We'll take the Redskins' success or the Commanders' success right now, but Lord, we hope the Wizards can turn it around. They've been just as in just as much of a 25, 30-year drought as the Commanders have been. So,
Davis, have you played basketball with Liddell Eccles recently?
No, I haven't. I'm retired from old man basketball, but I did play with. I played against Liddell Eccles and George Mirasan.
Hey, Wilmo, have you seen anybody from Richmond lately?
Have I seen anyone? Oh, so at the game Davis was at Episcopal, Kerry Goodwin was at the game, but I sent a text message out to our chat before the game asking for Ramon Streeter, who was a legend at Richmond, him and Kerry Goodwin's phone numbers, and someone gave me Streeter's right away, and I texted him. And then Dave Pastilnik didn't write back until after the game, and I'm on my way home, and I text Goodwin, and he was actually at the game. So probably better I didn't see him, but that's okay.
Goodwin is now that guy is the elite of the elite. I mean, a guy that kind of had it all and worked for it all, but Kerry is the man.
Yeah,
Kerry and Streeter, that's a couple heavy hitters coming out of Episcopal.
That's a couple heavy hitters. Sousa Davis and I are going to go down November 23rd. They play William & Mary last game of the year.
Are you guys going to go to that?
Great. We're going to try to.
Yep.
Yeah.
The Spiders had a big win against Delaware 2 weeks ago, and they walloped Bryant over
Davis,
the weekend.
If we get a football game, you can't go.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's
right.
true. I have one more question for you.
Yeah, go ahead. You gotta go.
In regards to the Commanders and the Hail Mary. I watched Rex Ryan. I watched all these people this morning on TV stating that.
Doesn't Rex Ryan seem like he could be like Davis's uncle?
No, not with those
100%.
teeth. None of my uncles would have those pearly white teeth. I mean, that's almost too white. Can you have too white of teeth? That's Rex Ryan.
All right, hurry up.
But if he was good, he'd still have a job. But anyways, he's in there saying, oh, you rush 3 and you do this and you do that. But, what is the proper way to defend the Hail Mary? You know what I mean? You rush all 5 or rush 6 guys and then,
I think
I'll tell you one thing. Hold on, Sousa. I'll tell you one thing. It's not what number was he? 27, 28, 29?
29.
It's not standing. I'll tell you one thing. You don't defend the Hail Mary by standing in the corner, flapping your hands like a bird.
Did you see that?
You've already won the game.
And the guy couldn't have played it any better. He literally issued an apology. I mean, so you sort of forgive him because it was a boneheaded move. He was still kind of in position to make the play. Look, the one thing I think the Redskins.
But he's the one that tipped it. He's the one that tipped the ball, Sousa. It was him that tipped the ball
He was trying to knock it down. He was. The one thing I'll say about, I think they played it well. Baylor got beat earlier this year, my neck of the woods, by not keeping contain on a guy like Shadur Sanders. Like they did, it seemed like they kept him in the pocket, right? Hey man, the magic just happens. I don't know that there is a defense for that, except for maybe your guy not dancing in the corner of the end zone.
It's just like the onside kick. I mean, I tell you, the only thing that really helps is, he had 13 seconds to throw the ball, which, I guess from the defensive side of the ball, strategizing on what to do. Do you rush 1? Do you rush 2? Do you rush 3? Obviously you're not going to rush more than 3. You got to protect the short. What if they want to throw it to the 10-yard line and then you hope for the same thing? Complete lock is catch it at the 10-yard line, throw it up. Start lateraling the ball, and then the other thing in today's day and age is just pass interference. I mean, it's so much easier to get a pass interference call on a Hail Mary, but I mean, there's not really any, it goes to what Davis and you said, it's really luck and there is no right way to defend it.
Underplayed is the play to Terry McLaurin for like 13 yards before that got them exactly to the point where he can get the ball to the end zone. If they don't get that play, he doesn't have a strong enough arm. They were talking about putting Mariota in the game. The announcers were, and I was like, no way you could put Mariota in the game because he had a stronger arm, but they got to where they needed to get to.
Okay, the announcers, by the way, in your memory, and this is, I swear, the last thing. When's the last time you remember Jim Nantz calling a game?
Hold on, Sousa, I have a great Jim Nantz story. So before I got into what I'm doing today, which is still involved with restaurants, I had a restaurant on 16th Street in D.C., and every year, the CBS crew used to come into D.C. They would stay at the St. Regis Hotel. And for 3 or 4 years straight, the restaurant was called BLT Steak, which just closed about 2 months ago after 18 years. And he would come every year to BLT to eat dinner. The night before whatever game he was calling here back then for the Redskins. And every year he would write me a handwritten note that would come from, and his mailing address is like Pebble Beach, Monterey, wherever he lives out there. And he would regularly come to DC for games once a year.
Okay.
He was doing a game once a year, and he couldn't have been the nicest guy in the world, like hands down nicest individual human being. But to your point, I don't remember him being in DC at least for a dozen years for a game.
Yeah.
At least, maybe longer.
Yeah, pretty cool. All right, look, we got to go. You guys, I love you both. This was a really good segment. Can we do it again?
Yeah.
Let's do it again. And I love you both more.
Love you guys.
All right,
Talk to you
all right.
soon.
Bye, guys.
Later. Bye-bye.
All right, you can't top that, but Cam Stewart, we'll try next. The Pete Sousa Show, powered by the Rogue Media Network. After this.
It's the Pete Sousa Show. Sports, Pete.
Scotty, bringing us back. Scotty, say your last name one more time.
Scotty Swingler.
Scotty Swingler. I mean, this guy is not on the PGA right now. That is a crime against humanity. Cam Stewart.
You can tell me you love me at the end of this?
Look, those guys are my brothers, all right?
I don't think that's a bad thing. I just want to be in the club.
That was a pretty good conversation.
It was good.
Did you hear us talking about Joe Douglas?
Just a little bit.
I put him on the spot asking him about Joe, but I want to ask you about Baylor. I am very – dude, come on. Just talk sports for a second. I know you're probably all sportsed out, but –
Dude, I am, but that is the job. That is the job.
What about Baylor?
What about them?
So they're a 3-point favorite on Saturday for that 8 p.m. blackout.
Yeah.
Come on,
well, dude, I can't. I've done too many of these to get to not be nervous about playing TCU.
Yeah.
It's been a decade. They've beaten them once in the last decade. And we have seen just about every example you can see. Great TCU, bad Baylor, or great Baylor, bad TCU, both mid, both ass, both battling for the same thing. It hasn't mattered. TCU always beats them. Always. TCU just firing their legendary coach after 20 years and Baylor being one of the best teams in the country doesn't matter. Like, it's just TCU about to go to the college football playoff. Baylor with a 10-point lead against them in the fourth quarter doesn't matter. So it's tough. I'm still going to get hyped up for this. This is going to have a ton of juice behind it in this area. I know it's not going to be college game day or anything, but these are two teams whose coaches were fired as hell a couple weeks ago, and now they're not. Now they're two of the hottest teams in the Big 12. They have good quarterbacks that could put up a lot of points on offense, both these teams. One is a lot more mistake-driven than the other. And it's going to be a night game. The Baylor's finally leaning into the blackout. They're honoring two of their best
Why
teams
do you
ever.
do this? You go like this. Baylor's finally leaning. You start to
Scotty,
shake your head.
Scotty, am I wrong? The last couple of years, it's the fans have tried it, and Baylor is not like we'll never say let's do a blackout.
Well, there's a history to that.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Scotty.
I know, and
Well, it's funny that we mention it this week because the history to that is the season after Art Briles got fired. The Baylor fans organized an unofficial blackout for a game in support of Art Briles. And so that led the administration to be very against blackout games for about a decade.
Scotty Swingler.
Well, no, Scotty's exactly right.
I mean,
Scotty's exactly right.
Thank you for some context here, because I'm from Philadelphia. So
Scotty's exactly right, but I just don't. And I don't know how he feels about it either. But I just thought it was a stupid. I think it was hollow reasoning.
Yeah, that's
like 2 years later, you just do it again. Like he's not coming back. You know what I mean?
I agree with you, and that's great history behind that. I agree with you though. You got to kind of move on. Like you can't let that kind of stuff drag you into the mud. You know what I mean?
Especially,
you're bigger than that.
Especially like from the fans' perspective, the last few years they have tried a green out. They have tried several gold outs. They have tried different kinds of stripe outs. None of them work.
Yeah.
And part of that is Baylor does not have great fans, if we're being totally honest. Like they're not one of the top college football fan bases in America, right? And so that's part of it. But for some reason, they've always been able to do blackout.
But that's a shot at Baylor fans. Look, Baylor alums and Baylor fans.
I'm both those things.
Yeah. When you're smart, you're an
I
informed
don't know
fan.
if I go that far.
Sometimes I wish you'd have a little more passion, but you know,
it's always
like
been my problem.
But I think I think you could say that for almost any college football fan base. Oh,
Correct.
Well, you know, they're great, not great fans. Look,
Well,
dude,
like
when
people
you're winning, your fans are going to kick ass.
And people were shitting on Baylor's stadium on Saturday. The Sun side specifically did not have a lot of people in it for a homecoming game. And like just everyone's dumping on him left, right, and center. And I see basically the same picture from TCU. You know, so it is. You're right. It's most college fan bases.
What about
Oklahoma State's not going to be packed to the gills next week?
No, and
it's not.
What's going on in Houston?
West Virginia,
although they had a huge win, like that's been scary. Like some of the crowds at those games it's been rough.
Houston is that's not a good fan base overall. I mean,
yeah,
and I know that.
Oh no, Houston basketball is amazing though. It's scary.
No, it is. Yes,
it's scary.
Yes,
and that's thanks to Mac Rhodes. I
in large part, yeah.
I mean,
he hired
Mac
Kelvin,
Rhodes hires Kelvin Sampson,
yeah.
and he changes the entire university.
When I was growing up, UH, I didn't even know what and I was a big college basketball nut, but I didn't know what their arena looked like. I never watched them on TV. Houston, never ranked, nothing. And I had known obviously about Phi Slamma Jamma and going back even further, Elvin Hayes. But it's kind of funny now. Like they were so in the wilderness, man. I don't even know what Conference USA probably.
Yeah.
Like they were essentially Rice basketball to me.
Oof.
You know, I don't know. And Rice basketball is still.
That's
Rice
a whole
basketball.
nother episode. Like, can Rice ever be good? Probably.
I think they choose not to.
Yeah.
And in favor of their academic standards. Which I think is a bullshit reasoning because I don't know. This is a school in Durham, North Carolina. That's pretty good at basketball, but they've done okay at basketball.
Yeah.
But I think that's what they'll do, and I think they'll make their hires based off.
Okay,
Stanford too.
Locked on Baylor, right?
Correct. It's a good show.
So what are some of the topics coming into this huge week? First of all, I didn't know these teams have been playing for, I guess, since before the forward pass, since like. I don't know.
Yes, 1899.
1899. And they're separated by 6 games. Yeah. Like how crazy is that?
In fact, I think the 61-58 game in 2014 broke a tie.
Yeah.
It was 51-51-7 or something like that. Yes, this is the longest continuous rivalry in the state of Texas. Yeah. 1899, they played thrice that year. In 1909, they also played thrice. That was the year of the first homecoming. And the first homecoming game was Baylor versus crosstown rival
TCU.
Adran College.
Oh, yeah, Adran, but that became TCU.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they moved out of Waco the next year after a suspicious fire.
What are your why do you say suspicious?
Just saying that, they were in Waco.
So you think that like Baylor
long time rivalry?
Okay. That's a little extreme, but you know, I can't speak to that time.
I
right.
can. Don't worry.
What are
the focus? What's the focus?
Yeah, I'm curious this week.
I think it's honestly like kind of bigger picture stuff. Mostly, I find the coaching thing really fascinating. They did a poll before Big 12 Media Days last year to find out who every Big 12 coach's favorite musical artist was.
Yeah.
And the only ones that repeated were Dave Aranda and Sonny Dykes.
Dave Matthews
Band.
Was Dave Aranda. And what was Sonny Dykes?
Dave Matthews Band.
No.
They were the only ones that
repeated.
had the same.
I got you. They had the same. I thought you meant 2 years in a row.
So I'm trying to see how I can angle that into here. But it's I find it like interesting in terms of where these two programs were going leading into this season and through the first couple of games of this season. And that, but again, both these fan bases wanted their coaches fired. A couple weeks ago, you could make a good argument that Dave Aranda should have been fired last year. And now they both have momentum going. They're two of the top 3 recruiting teams in the Big 12 in the class of 2025. So that was a storyline for both teams this year. Hey, if you really, really suck, are you going to lose all of these recruits? And now they don't suck anymore. TCU's 5-3, Baylor's 4-4. They both have favorable schedules, it looks like, to end the year. Specifically, Baylor does.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's going to be a night game and the 2013-14 Big 12 champs are going to be there, which comes with its own storylines. Yeah. Both those teams beat TCU both years, by the way, and won the Big 12 championship both of those years. TCU had a great second place team in 2014, but Baylor won the conference both those years. The coaches hated each other. One of them is not invited back for obvious reasons in Art Briles, and the other was on Baylor staff earlier this year. There's so much overlap. And what I alluded to earlier with the offense is like, both these teams weirdly have the makings of that 2014 great matchup. And like, obviously Baylor's offense is not the Art Briles one of 2014, but it's starting to look a little bit more like that. And they've got a quarterback who can play that. And so does TCU. And it's just, I don't know. It's really fascinating. I think the rivalry itself is fascinating in that it's two of the also-rans, so to speak, in the history of Texas football. Everyone remembers UT and A&M, and they don't really remember the two of us. And it's been very similar. The schools are very similar in a lot of ways. The programs are very similar. And the coaches both like Dave Matthews Band.
Speaking of one of the coaches, because of what you talked about, KWTX actually came out with a story yesterday that, there'll be other stuff that players will be doing that will include Art Briles. Which has people saying, well, why can't Art Briles be included? My opinion, by no means should Art Briles. I just don't think he should be part of that celebration. I'm sorry. I do not believe because of – and I think he should be coaching somewhere. I don't think it should be like a lifetime ban. Yeah. I think two things can be true at once. That will only take away from the celebration of this team. And it would bring up so much bad blood and bad energy. It is not like somebody coming home like that, like Roger Clemens coming back to Boston or something like that. This is a much bigger issue.
Yeah. And I think most people, including some of those players that are going to be out there, will understand where Baylor's coming from.
Yeah,
you could think he got railroaded and think he's a scapegoat. And I can absolutely hear that out. You know what I mean?
But that's not to be litigated in this.
Correct.
Exactly.
Like that's just kind of how this works. And I thought a different example or somewhat similar example, which I thought looked worse on the school, was that TCU last weekend wanted to do or they haven't done like a 10th anniversary of that 2014 team that claims a championship. And they weren't going to invite Gary Patterson out there. Gary Patterson does not have a job right now. Okay. He lives right next to the stadium, and he's the greatest coach in their history. And he has to organize something for his players from the 2014 team in the parking lot. That's to me ridiculous. This at Baylor, it is not. And one of the local restaurants is going to host a party with some of the players and some of the coaches, including Art Briles. And to me, it's okay, that's fine, man. It's a private business that wants to do this. I think that's more than okay.
And Brett
I
Ingram,
wouldn't do it, but I totally get that.
Brett Ingram, who I really like, who's Baylor's, basically he's the associate athletic director for communications, and he does the football team's communications. He had a great quote. Basically, he just said, "Hey, these teams that are welcome back, they celebrate in all kinds of different ways, and they have offshoot parties, and like, hey, that's great,
Yeah.
And it wasn't anything negative about Bryles or any of that stuff. So, Baylor coordinates certain events, and that's what the school's responsible for. We are responsible for a great show today. Thanks to Scotty Swingler, baby.
Scotty.
All right. And also Cam Stewart, Matt Davis, and Adam Wilimowski. Wow, that was really special having those guys join us to talk about Jaden Daniels in Washington, D.C. If you missed the show, we're going to post it all on YouTube. And, of course, you can catch the audio version. And we'd like to thank our sponsors, right? Specifically, Slovakics. Woo! We'll be back tomorrow. But first, we're going to let you go and just have some fun with this. I tried to do a bit of a phony phone call with Christy, my girlfriend, and it didn't go well. But I didn't want to not share it. So we're going to take a peek at that, and then we are going to be back tomorrow. Take care, everybody. Hi, man.
Hello. 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 Are you there? Hello.
She hung up. Oh. Let's just do it again. Hold on.
Hello. I cannot hear you if you were talking. Your
Can you hear the
headphones
song?
not working. Now I can hear you. Hello. Hello.
Can you hear that song?
No.
That was 2001 Space Odyssey. That's what I played this morning
Oh.
when I fixed the
Okay.
hose.
Okay. I heard this weird horn thing, and I was like, "What am I hearing?" I hear
No,
honking.
let's talk about it really though. How excited did you get when that song came on and I sprung into action and was able to do something that only a person of my strength could do? Really?
It's pretty exciting, Pete.
Was it? All right, I love you. I'll call you later.
All right, I love
We're
you
testing
too.
stuff out for the show. Bye.
All right, awesome.
It's the Pete Sousa Show. Sports, Pete.
We are Rogue Media Sports.